we take a look in Africa and beyond. Africa World Hour with Sipiso Makwetla. And we close it up with some love. The Hotlines with Shailen Dikumana, 10 till 12 p.m. on Channel Africa. Across borders, across time zones, on air, online. This is Channel Africa. Africa has a voice, and that voice is Channel Africa. It keeps you in motion, speaking, singing, questioning, rising. Wake up with Rise and Shine, 6 till 9. Peter and Asanda, as they bring you breaking news, sharp analysis, and the voices that shape the day. At mid-morning, we get on the move with Palisa and Benjamin, digging into the African lifestyle, people, and the things that make Africa smile. 12 till 1, Africa Update with Lulu, Gaboo, getting in-depth, powerful stories, and the perspective you won't hear anywhere else. Africa, on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Midday, and this is Africa Update coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on Channel Africa Radio from an African perspective. I'm Lulu Gaboo. I'm in studio with Onele Nzinzi, Msibudi Makura and Buntle Hetbush. Now, coming up in this hour, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to sign a peace agreement in the United States of America. And South Africa's Democratic Alliance Party calls on President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire ministers implicated in corruption. But first up, the news with Onele Nzinzi and our sports headlines with Msibudi Makura.
The notion that you can negotiate.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu, and greetings to our listeners. The Foreign Affairs Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have traveled to Washington to sign a peace agreement between the two countries. The peace agreement is aimed at resolving the conflict in the eastern part of the DRC. Last month, the former South African President Thabo Mbeki warned that the agreement between Kinshasa and Kigali will not solve the problems in the eastern DRC.
The notion that you can negotiate that the government of the Congo and the government of Rwanda must meet and sign a peace agreement is fine. That is going to solve the problems of the eastern Congo is wrong. This has been tried before, and we keep saying to the people, to everybody, the problems of the eastern Congo are domestic to the Congo. They don't originate from outside of the borders of the Congo. So whatever the Americans have been doing to encourage Kinshasa and Kigali to get together and somebody, it has not solved the problems of the Congo.
South Africa's former Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield, says President Cyril Ramaphosa has not given him a reason for his dismissal. Yesterday, the presidency announced the dismissal of Whitfield, completely blindsiding its largest government of national unity partner, the Democratic Alliance. The party has since given President Ramaphosa 48 hours to reconsider his decision, threatening dire consequences for the GNU. Whitfield explains.
I received a letter on Wednesday, and that letter didn't provide any explanation, but thanked me for my service and reiterated the president's legal prerogative to appoint and disappoint in this case. But one of the reasons may very well be that I traveled to the United States earlier this year. I did request permission from the president. After 10 days, I had not received a response, and I undertook to go, obviously at risk, but I undertook to go because my party had asked me to go.
South Africa's Police Crimes Intelligence Head, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, is expected to appear at the Pretoria Magistrate Court today after he and other senior police officials were arrested at the OR Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg yesterday. Lupang Alamu explains.
The NPA's Henry Mamotame confirmed the arrests to SABC News. He says Khumalo and other senior managers within the South African Police Service are expected to appear at the Pretoria Central Magistrate Court on Friday. However, he could not give more details about the possible charges the suspects will face and the circumstances relating to their arrests. But reports suggest this could be in connection with the alleged unlawful appointments.
Soldiers in Togo have used tear gas and batons to disperse hundreds of protesters who blocked main roads in the capital to call for the resignation of the longtime leader Farouk Gnassingbe yesterday. The gathering, organized by bloggers and activists, highlighted persisting political strife in Togo, where last month Gnassingbe was given a powerful role of president of the Council of Ministers that has no fixed term limit. Opposition parties have described his new appointment as a constitutional coup that could extend his rule for life. Protest organizers had called for 3 days of gathering. Lastly, the UN Special Rapporteur for Belarus, Niels Muizhnieks, has warned of a dire human rights situation in the country. Belarus has been under ruthless rule of the authoritarian leader Alexander Lukashenko for more than 3 decades. Muizhnieks told the UN Human Rights Council he was most concerned about the political persecution waged by the authorities.
Over the reporting period, the overall human rights situation continued to deteriorate, with new forms of repression added to old. The most worrying trend which has continued is political persecution of people for the legitimate and peaceful exercise of their civil and political rights.
Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the ROC President Kirsty Coventry says the organisation will take a lead regarding gender eligibility in sports, while Real Madrid beat RB Salzburg by 3-0 to finish top of Group H and advance to the last round of 16 at the FIFA Club World Cup. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Thank you to Onelin Zinti with our news update and Msabudi Makura with our sports headlines. It is 12:07 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. And today on hashtag Africa Update asks, what do you make of the 48-hour ultimatum to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire ANC ministers and deputy ministers implicated in corruption? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. And what do you make of the 48-hour ultimatum to South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire ANC ministers and deputy ministers implicated in corruption? Africa Update asks.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
And we go to our top story where we focus on South Africa's International Relations and Cooperations Minister Ronald Lamola having appealed to the Zambian government and former President Edgar Lungu's family to resolve their differences regarding his final resting place. Zambia's Foreign Minister Mulambo Haimbe says Lusaka is willing to hold discussions with the Lungu family. Bonolo Maribe has more.
This was a memorial service that was supposed to be a funeral. However, an agreement was reached between the Zambian government and the Lungu family to postpone the funeral. Both parties are expected back in the High Court in Pretoria, where the matter of Lungu's burial will be addressed. International Relations and Cooperation Minister Ronald Lamola says the stakeholders must use this moment to try and resolve their differences.
It's unfortunate that the situation had to reach where a court has to intervene. As the South African government, we have always stood and said to both the family and the Zambian government, we are ready to assist the process of reparations. We think as the South African government that from both sides, there must be a compromise. This is not a matter that must be resolved by court. The family must compromise on certain issues which they can engage with the Zambian government. The Zambian government must also do the same.
Zambian Foreign Affairs Minister Mulambo Hayimbe is happy with the agreement reached by the parties and is willing to use this time to re-engage with the Lungu family.
I'd like to say clearly on behalf of government at this stage that it remains our wish and will that we re-engage and we find common ground in the interest of not only the family who equally want to see a befitting send-off to our former president, but also in the interest of the wider interest of the people of Zambia.
Hayimbe has also thanked Pretoria for assisting both parties at this difficult time.
Let me take the opportunity to thank the South African government, the President of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course my counterpart for being there for us as Zambia from the time that this situation presented itself. The South African government has been very supportive to not only the government of Zambia, but to the family as well.
The next court hearing will take place on the 4th of August if the parties fail to resolve their differences. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
In this episode of Channel Africa Conversations, Peter talks to Dr. Thulisile Buddha, an academic, author, and an expert in indigenous knowledge systems. Join us for a compelling discussion on preserving African languages and traditions in the digital era. Dr. Thulisile unpacks the role of educators, explorers, and how technologies like AI can support cultural preservation, and challenges us to rethink how we honor African heritage. You can find the episode on YouTube, SABC Plus, and on our website, channelafrica.co.za. This episode is a must-listen for educators, creators, and change makers across the continent. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has told the General Assembly that the Charter of the United Nations was not optional. He was speaking at a commemorative plenary meeting to observe the 80th anniversary of the signing of the Charter in San Francisco in 1945, a signing that included South Africa as a founding member of the organization. Guterres made the case that upholding the principles of the Charter was a never-ending mission in a world that is increasingly seeing assaults on its purposes and principles, as shown Bryce Peace reports.
Then, a history-making moment, as Lord Halifax calls for a standing vote on the approval of the Charter.
It was a momentous occasion for an international community that had just endured the catastrophe of World War II. Signed by the representatives of 50 nations at the time, an international treaty that today outlines the binding principles of international relations for all 193 member states. Listen to the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres.
80 years ago, from the ashes of war, the world planted a seed of hope. One charter, one vision, one promise, that peace is possible when humanity stands together. The UN Charter is a declaration of hope and the foundation of international cooperation for a better world.
As part of the UN's commemorations, the original copy of the United Nations Charter has been transferred on loan from the US National Archives and Records Administration to United Nations headquarters in New York City. Now on display at the visitors' lobby, the historic document is the centerpiece of a special exhibition that runs through August 2025. Commemorating the signing of the Charter in San Francisco in 1945 and celebrates its enduring legacy as a symbol of global solidarity, dialogue and cooperation. It also displays a photo collage that includes then Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa, Field Marshal Jan Smuts. Signing the Charter, he played a prominent role in drafting.
Today we see assaults on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter like never before. The threat and use of force against sovereign nations, the violation of international law, including international humanitarian law and international human rights law, the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure, the weaponization of food and water, the erosion of human rights. On and on we see an all too familiar pattern. Follow when the Charter suits, ignore when it does not. The Charter of the United Nations is not optional. It is not an à la carte menu. It is the bedrock of international relations.
Guterres urged member states to recommit to the ideals of the UN's founding document.
Aujourd'hui, plus que jamais,
today more than ever, we must respect and renew our commitment to international law.
And that report by Sherwin Bryce Peace. It is 15 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Democratic Alliance party has called on President Cyril Ramaphosa to fire ANC ministers and deputy ministers implicated in corruption within the next 48 hours. Now, this after President Ramaphosa fired the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, Andrew Whitfield, in the Government of National Unity cabinet. Whitfield is a Democratic Alliance political party member of parliament, and he has said he was never given the reasons for his dismissal by President Cyril Ramaphosa when he received the letter of his termination yesterday. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by political analyst Sandile Swana. Sandile, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Thank you, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Let me start by asking, do ultimatums work?
Yes, ultimata do work if you have the power, if you have something that the other party can lose. But in this instance, I think these are the bugs of a toothless dog.
Now, looking at President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to fire the former deputy minister, how will this impact the government of national unity? And just also considering that every time there is a slight disagreement or, it's always the DA coming up and saying, we're going to pull out. There's always an ultimatum.
Yes, so all of us now know that that is something that doesn't work. As things stand, next to the door of the GNU, the Government of National Unity in South Africa, you have the EFF, which has publicly stated that should the DA come out of the GNU, the EFF is quite ready to take their place. It is likely that the Action SA political party in South Africa is also ready to take a seat or a number of seats and the BOSA. So there's a few parties that could be quite happy to fill in any vacancy left by the DA. And those parties on foreign policy are more likely to agree with the ANC than the DA.
Now, is this a valid reason to dismiss the deputy minister Whitfield? This now because according to the DA party leader John Steenhuisen, Whitfield was fired because of his travels abroad without getting permission. Is there another route that could have been used to resolve this?
So when you say this, it is the this that actually matters here. The this is that there is a conflict between the DA and the ANC, perhaps the ANC and the white minority in South Africa generally, where the white minority led by the DA, Freedom Front Plus and Solidarity want the South Africa to be an ally, if not a satellite of the United States, to be an enclave of Western white Christian civilization in Africa, and to look after American interests. So all of those demands that the DA is pushing for the time being are focused in two departments, one being the foreign affairs or international relations, the other one being trade and industry, where there are discussions about AGOA, about trade tariffs and so on. Unfortunately, every time these white South Africans interact with the United States of America, it has been to worsen the position of South Africa and to worsen the position of the African National Congress. So it may not just be the issue of the visit itself, it will be also the issue of ongoing activities during this period of negotiations as to what is it exactly that Whitfield is doing that Ramaphosa found intolerable to the point that he had to terminate him. And it doesn't need to give reasons, because anybody who serves anywhere in any part of the cabinet serves only at the president's pleasure. The president has got absolute authority to appoint and to disappoint anybody in the cabinet.
Do you foresee a cabinet reshuffle following Whitfield's dismissal?
That's exactly the point that the DA wants. And the state president has made it clear that this is not a cabinet reshuffle. The president is just removing a clear, undesirable element from the cabinet, and that element is a second deputy minister of trade and industry, because there are two deputies there. Limpi still remains as the deputy minister, so there is no real vacancy that is being created at this juncture.
Just for interest's sake, what should we as the public read into everything that is unfolding currently? As you touched on, the fact that there are continued negotiations between South Africa and the US. And there's a third element that seems to also be in the works, coming from the DA and whether the Freedom Front Plus and other parties that seem to also have their own agenda. How should we read into this current situation? And with President Ramaphosa being a very clearly decisive individual when it comes to such issues, could he have acted in a different manner? Or do you think at some point he will take us into his confidence as to exactly what unfolded?
I think what is unfolding is clear and it is not new. In 1998, Thabo Mbeki, the then deputy president of the Republic of South Africa, wrote that South Africa is made up of two nations. One white and very rich, the other one black and very poor. Now, the people who are doing business with the United States, the businesses are actually white businesses. There is no Murolong, no Gumede, no black man is doing any business, or black person is doing any business of any substance with the United States right now. So the negotiations with the United States are negotiations about white businesses, the interests of white people, really. The international businesses that are trading with the United States from South Africa, the 601 American businesses, and then you have European automakers, they have no problem being represented by our Department of Trade, Industry and Foreign Relations. The people who have a problem being represented by the Minister, Lamola, and Minister Dow are actually the white minority South Africans who do not see themselves as fit enough to be represented by these two black ministers for any number of reasons. And they want to resuscitate the relationship, as the golfers said, that they want the support of the United States similar to the support that they enjoyed during the days of the armed struggle, when the United States supported them in the war against Angola, the ANC, and the Cuban internationalist forces during the liberation. That was mentioned in the White House. So they are trying to resuscitate that old apartheid era relationship. That is what the DA and Solidarity and this Freedom Front Plus, these white minority organizations are trying to do. And Ramaphosa is wise in actually nipping this in the bud. So he needs to nip it in the bud. He needs to make sure that anything that is said by them or through them is actually not part of government policy.
Well, Sandile, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today. That's a political analyst, Sandile Swana, joining us on the line.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Dr. Bright Okoju, Chief of Staff at the World Trade Organization, says inadequate infrastructure remains one of the key obstacles of structural transformation and the full realization of the African Continental Free Trade Area. He made the remarks in an exclusive interview with Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Simosa on the sidelines of the G20 Sherpas meeting currently underway in South Africa's Northwest Province. Let's take a listen.
You're absolutely correct. The current level of trade within Africa is about 15-16%, which is really very small. It should actually be in the region of 30 to 40 or even higher percent. So it is one of the issues that I think the continent needs to grapple with and to overcome. What are the reasons why we have this difficulty? Part of it is that most African countries produce very similar products, let's say raw materials. South Africa is not going to export its raw material to Zimbabwe, which is producing maybe similar types of agri products, which is why we have been advocating that what the continent needs is to be able to process its own raw materials into finished products. So let's take, for example, those who produce cocoa. You need to be able to invest such that the investment will yield you, at the end of the day, chocolate or products that are used in the cosmetic industry. So you're adding value. So value, moving up, what we call moving up the value chain, this is what you require. And if countries can do that, clearly they will be trading more with each other, which means you can produce the full product, cocoa, and send to other parts of Africa, where they will obviously buy the finished product instead of buying the same finished product from Europe. So this is one of the things.
Just the last one from me. Is it because of lack of political will, if I hear you correctly? Because we've been here for quite some time. You look at Nigeria, Dangote has been back and forth with government in terms of working on his refinery projects. Is it government lack of political will, or just people who are not supposed to be in those positions?
Dangote is, by the way, just to correct it, it's no longer back and forth. It's producing petroleum now in Nigeria. It's producing refined products and it's selling.
But it took time.
Yes, it took time. You're absolutely correct. Regulation and things of that type. But it's now selling both in Nigeria and in West Africa. And in fact, I think it's selling also now to the Middle East. So that is a good example of how you need to do your own, use the crude oil, refine it, and be able to add value. So when you sell it, you are making more money from it, and you're not going to waste foreign exchange to import the same products from other places. So certainly, but one of the other issues I have to, just to complete this part of the conversation, one of the issues there is that infrastructure is a problem for many of the countries. You need also investment in the production capacity. The factories will not just come from the ground. You need people to invest in, for example, a refinery.
And that was Dr. Bright Okoju, the Chief of Staff at the World Trade Organization, speaking to Channel Africa's business reporter, Innocent Samosa. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next with Onel Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. The Foreign Affairs Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda have travelled to Washington to sign a peace agreement between the two countries. The peace agreement is aimed at resolving the conflict in the eastern part of the DRC. Kenya's Interior Minister Kipchumba Murkomen have accused protesters of attempting to overthrow the government during a day of deadly demonstrations yesterday. Remarks that protest leaders said are an attempt to deflect attention from their demands. And Japan has executed a death row inmate for the first time in 3 years. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Onele. We say good afternoon to Msibudi Makura with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. A very good afternoon from the Sports Desk. So, Kirsty Coventry, the new president of the International Olympic Committee, says its members have shown overwhelming support to protecting the female category in sport. So, in a significant shift in policy, she said the ROC must play a leading role in discussions on gender eligibility. At her first news conference since taking the role earlier on this week, the Zimbabwean revealed a working group on the issue made up of experts as well as international federations would now ensure that they find consensus. The ROC has previously left gender regulations to the governing bodies of individual sports rather than applying a universal approach. But having, of course, become the first woman to hold the ROC presidency, the 41-year-old Coventry said its members now wanted to develop a policy to come up with cohesion. However, Coventry also hinted that no retrospective action then would be taken over the controversial boxing tournament at last year's Paris Olympic Games, where the IOC's handling of the gender rules came under intense scrutiny. Now, during her election campaign, the former swimmer Coventry, a 7-time Olympic medalist, pledged to introduce a blanket ban on transgender women competing in female Olympic competitions. In the recent years, a growing number of sports federations have barred athletes who have undergone male puberty from competing in elite female competition, amid concerns, of course, over fairness as well as safety. However, in other sports, transgender women are still able to compete in women's events at the Olympic Games. On to some rugby news now, as we build up, of course, to tomorrow's match between the Springboks as well as the Barbarians. Chessie Creel will captain the Springbok side in that match on Saturday after Siam Kolisi was forced to withdraw with a late niggle. Now, the coach, Rassie Rasmus, was forced to make a late change to his Bok team on Friday earlier on today, of course, following that withdrawal of Kolisi due to an unspecified injury. Marco van Staden has been drafted straight into the starting lineup as a replacement for Kolisi and will then partner up with Vincent Chituka as well as Jean-Luc Dupré in a loose trio. The rest of the squad remains as announced by coach Rassie Erasmus earlier on in the week. Sam Cane, the New Zealand captain of the 2023 Rugby World Cup's final loss to South Africa, is in the Barbarian squad to face off with the Springboks in Cape Town tomorrow. The 33-year-old flanker has since quit Test rugby after 104 appearances for the All Blacks and also moved to Japan, where he plays for the Tokyo Sun Goliath. Now, the couple of Ireland Test centurions, including prop Sian Hilly as well as flanker Peter O'Hamony, have also ended their international careers this year and are also part of the 23-man squad for this exhibition match set for Cape Town. Kane speaks on what this match means to him.
I think a lot of us who've played the Springboks before love the challenge of playing them. It's awesome that it's here in Cape Town, and I suppose I thought last year was going to be my last chance to play the Boks, but one more chance this weekend, and to do it with this group of lads, but become part of a rugby club that's pretty exclusive, by invitation only, and that the jersey, this Barbars jersey, has been worn by some of the greatest rugby players across the world that we've ever seen. It's going to be, it was really special for us.
And finally, in some cricket news, fast bowler Andrik Nortje has not been included in South Africa's squad for next month's T20 Tri-Series against Zimbabwe as well as New Zealand. Nortje will also, who was with the Kolkata Knight Riders in the Indian Premier League recently before withdrawing from the Los Angeles Knight Riders Major League Cricket campaign in the USA due to a back injury. So Proteas head coach Shukri Conrad says they will monitor the extent of his injury.
The medical team has obviously got that under control, so we obviously have to see how things pan out there with regards to length of time that he potentially could be out and the extent of that injury. And I really feel for Anna. I mean, he's obviously he's a superstar fast bowler, and him just having to deal with setback after setback, that can't be easy. But we'll await to see what the medical feedback is regarding that.
Right, so that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call, the newsroom line, +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Well, thank you to Msibudu Makura with our sports update. And it is 12:37 Central African time. And we say good afternoon to Bunke Hedbush with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Lulu, and a very good afternoon to our listeners. In our top business story at this hour, Senegal has revised its 2025 budget deficit upward to 7.82% of gross domestic product from an initial forecast of 7.08%. According to the revised finance draft seen by Reuters, the increase is attributed to a drop in projected revenues and a downward revision of nominal GDP. It cited global economic headwinds and domestic fiscal adjustments as key factors behind the revision. Tlantla Mahlangu has more.
The bill indicates that the development is mainly explained by a decline in budget revenues combined with a downward revision of the nominal GDP. Economic growth in Senegal following its recent production in oil and gas is now expected at 8.0% compared with the previous forecast of 8.8% in 2025. An audit in September revealed that Senegal's budget deficit exceeded 10% from 2019 to 2023, more than twice the figures reported by the previous administration. For Channel Africa News, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
The Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has signed into law 4 bills that will radically alter taxation in Africa's most populous nation. The new laws exempt small businesses from paying company tax, cut the corporate tax rate, and streamline collection. The 4th bill reorganizes the division of revenue between federal and state governments. The BBC's Chiamaka Enendu has the details.
This is expected to grant tax reliefs to low-income earners across the nation. For instance, if you earn about ₦1 million, which is approximately $625 annually, then you are exempted from paying taxes. And it also, gives 0% VAT to unessential goods such as, healthcare, food, rent, electricity, and the like. So ideally, the essential monthly expenses should be cheaper going forward.
Toyota Motors global sales have risen for a 5th straight month in May, setting a record for the month as strong demands in markets such as the US held firm despite President Donald Trump's tariffs. The company says the worldwide sales climbed 6.9% year-on-year to 898,721 vehicles in May, driven by robust demand in North America, China and Japan. Tabisa Luhuku reports.
The automaker says sales in the US went up by almost 11%. However, Toyota's global vehicle production edged down 0.7% year-on-year in May, the first drop in 5 months, due to fewer operating days in Japan. The production and sales figures also include Toyota's luxury brand Lexus. The upbeat sales numbers come even as Japan's auto sector faces mounting pressure from US trade measures.
Former Deputy President of the National Union of Mine Workers of South Africa, Philip Vilakazi, has been elected as the union's new president. He defeated the outgoing president, Daniel Balepile, in a close contest. Vilakazi secured 347 votes against Balepile's 331, with a total of 747 delegates from 11 regions casting their ballots. In addition to Vilakazi's election, Mpho Phakedi has been installed as the new General Secretary and Ulehile Khware as the new Deputy President. In his first address to delegates, Vilakazi promised a focus on growth and unity within the union.
Comrades, this collective, all of us, we have got the responsibility. Top of the list is to ensure that we grow this union in the next year. In our 100 days in office, we are going to visit all of you as regions. In our 100 days in office, all regions must give us an opportunity to go to branches where we lost membership.
Further afield, in China has confirmed it's agreed with the US on how to implement the trade deal reached earlier this month. China's Commerce Ministry said Washington would lift restrictive measures while Beijing would review and approve items under export controls. The BBC's Jay Kwan reports.
America had accused China of stopping the export of these rare ingredients for any modern machinery, whether it's sensors, magnets, and it even has implication into national security because a lot of these components are used on weapons. And China accused America of stopping the sale of semiconductor chips. 2 weeks ago, the two sides met again in London to iron out that detail, and at the time we heard that they have agreed to a framework deal. And it seems that yesterday they finalized that framework deal, which really bodes well to those countries finishing their trade war. At the same time, this appears to be a middle step, and it will be a while to reach the final line.
Now taking a look at our indicators at this hour, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 543. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 24. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 60, and in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 46. The BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 52. Russia, 78 rubles 47. In India, it's 85 rupees 72. China, 7 yuan 17, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 73 cents this afternoon. $1 is trading at 72 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at the commodities, gold is trading at $3,290 per ounce and platinum at $1,358 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $68.27 a barrel currently. And those are your business news at this hour. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Bontle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. We are on OpenView's audio bouquet. Channel 628. Africa Update with Lulu, Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, thank you to Bunke Hedbush with our business news. It is 12:45 Central African Time. And we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. The Foreign Affairs Ministers of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo are today expected to sign a peace agreement in Washington in the United States of America that aims to end the fighting in the eastern Congo. A U.S. Secretary of State Mark Rubio is expected to witness the ceremony. The long-awaited peace agreement is set to be a step toward ending months of intense fighting in the DRC. The conflict has ravaged eastern DRC, claiming thousands of lives and displaced hundreds of thousands of people. The Congo has accused Rwanda of supporting the M23 rebels, a group leading the takeover of many cities in the eastern DRC. Rwanda has denied backing the M23 rebels. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line by Dr. David Matanga, who is a political scientist and international relations expert. Dr. Matanga, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. As usual, we fight for Africa, a better Africa, and we shall stand firm to make sure that there is peace all over Africa. Thank you.
Now, Dr. Matanga, what do you make of the fact that this agreement will be signed in the U.S.?
The United States of America has taken up the policing and the policeman of the world. The agreement that they are signing in Washington has nothing to do with African Union methods, guidelines, principles that we wanted to finish this war once for all. There are 240 armed groups stationed on the territory of Congo. It is only one group we are measuring. It has taken territory, North Kivu and South Kivu. The Congolese foreign minister is only talking when he has 240 armed groups. Have these armed groups agreed to this agreement? Yes or no? The answer is no. We still have groups that want to create chaos to neighboring countries. Groups in the Congo itself, the ADF, and other armed groups that are facing to kill us in Uganda and other places. Have we talked to these groups? Have we brought them on table? The 240 groups, Lulu, will cause a problem. This is not an agreement. It is a shallow horror without the African Union, without SADC, without East African Community, and without agencies of UN involved. It is a shallow, hollow, prudish, sardonic agreement.
that will come out of Washington.
Do you think this may hold? Do you think they maybe have a different strategy of signing this agreement and then involving everyone else?
How are you going to silence the guns first? There will be other rebels wanting to go up to Kinshasa to overthrow the government of Kinshasa. In fact, Tshisekedi is signing his death warrant. He's in trouble. Do you know the events taking place in Kivu? There is nothing that the people, the world, the biggest problem of these organizations and America and so on, they run around. They teach this subject of international relations, but they forget one principle. What is the root cause of DRC Congo? Ethnicity. These groups that have carved their territory from North Kivu to South Kivu, Ngoma, Bukavu, Masisi. What is their root cause? Why did they pick up guns? You have not solved that problem, and you are working on top of a problem that you are signing because you want diamonds, you want lithium, you want uranium, you want whatever you want, you can take it. But the root cause of this conflict in DRC Congo, as Matsanga says, who has studied the same subject, may be better than Mr. Trump, who is signing these documents, is, and it will be, ethnicity. The West does not like the East. They call them Tutsi. The East wants a state. Congo is too big. I am being honest. Most Africans are not honest. They wear suits and go to this conference to sign. Congo is too big to be governed from Kinshasa. Let's look for another method of reconciliation, truth-telling, accountability. Redemption strategy hasn't worked in Congo. You have not 240 others standing army on your own territory. Then you run to Washington to buy maybe perfumes for your wives and concubines and come back and say, I've signed an agreement. Which agreement? Which agreement? What happened to the East African and SADC? Why have we lost morals of our own African issue to solve an African conflict? What is AU saying about two foreign ministers running to Washington, promising diamonds, signing agreement, another rebel group that will come up? How many agreements are we going to sign? So for me, I'm skeptical that this peace agreement will give us hope, bring long-lasting solution to the problem of DRC Congo.
Now, Dr. Matsanga, another interesting fact is that between Congo and Rwanda, they are not formally at war. And in the past, talks have been held and largely stalling. What needs to be done? What led to the accusations by the DRC to state that Rwanda is in the middle of, is the catalyst basically of this crisis there?
Now, does it mean Rwanda has accepted it? Indeed, it was funding the rebels. Has it? We ask a question because I support Kagame. I will support him up to the end. He's a comrade like me. He has fought battles. He's a soldier. I will not ever be against him. But this one, there is something which we call very uncoordinated, which could end up to either, one, remove the DRC government or create chaos back home for Kagame himself. What are the Americans trying to achieve? Are you going to give a state? What do the rebels want? M23. Have you involved the countries in the East African community, in the SADC? Those who have lost people, men there fighting. Tanzania, has it been involved? Have you called them? South Africa, Uganda, for example, has it been consulted? We have troops officially requested by the government of DRC Congo to flush out ADF rebels, terrorists that are in the forest in Garamba Park and other Ituri and other areas. You haven't consulted Uganda. You are running to sign these agreements. What about the people who have stood by you for a long time? This is a hollow, I've told you already, shallow. It's a shallow agreement that cannot, it will dry. What about the Qatar agreement? What has happened to it? Have we abandoned it? What about the SADC, East African? Have we abandoned it? What about the AU initiative of Obasanjo, Uhuru Kenyatta? We paid a lot of money. What is Ethiopian Prime Minister, President, what have we done? We have avoided, we have left African Union out. And we are rushing to Washington, maybe to buy perfumes for our loved ones and other coats and see the weather and come back. The agreement will not stand.
Well, Dr. Matanga, it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much, Lulu. And I am sorry I talk my mind because I don't want to tell Africans lies that this agreement will work. I have been there in Southern City. I have been in Durban. I've been in the Lusaka agreement. I've seen all these things. They never work. And what about Kabila, who is now in the DRC Congo in Ngoma? What will you do to him? Where will you place him, Lulu? That's another question for the day.
Yes, another question for another discussion. Thank you for always being available, Dr. Matanga.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, and to you too. That is Dr. David Matanga, political scientist and international relations expert, joining us on the line.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Now, in the heart of North Rhine-Westphalia, where tradition meets a cosmopolitan flair, the vibrant city of Cologne stands as Germany's fourth largest metropolis and its most international after Berlin. Known for its spirited carnival, iconic Kolsch beer, and a thriving media industry, Cologne isn't just about old cathedrals and riverfront strolls. It's a city that embraces diversity, creativity, and celebration at every corner. As Channel Africa is in Germany, we caught up with Maria Mijuskovic, a Serbian media student and a resident of Cologne for the past 3 years, who gave our reporter Michael Mbewe a vivid look into life in this liberal, multicultural hub. Here's her story.
It is the biggest city in North Rhine-Westphalia. It is not the capital. I believe that is Düsseldorf. That's like the admin center. But this one is the biggest at around 1.4, I want to say, million people. It is supposed to be one of the most international cities in Germany after Berlin. It is a very open city and it's the most famous for carnival. It takes place in the period between the 11th November. It starts exactly at 11:11 and technically continues until the week before Easter. So like right before Lent it ends, and then we have a week in February where we celebrate and people dress up and there's a lot of alcohol on the street. It's like a really big street party. Yes. And
so tell us about the culture. Take us through, the dressing in terms of the tradition, the teachings of the culture in Germany, but also the cuisine. And then, like you said, in the carnival, what kind of music, besides the alcohol festival?
Yes.
What kind of music do, Germans like locally? Yes.
It's an interesting question because for Cologne, you have a lot of different cuisines. Over the bridge, you've mostly stuck to this part of town, like the old town. But if you cross the bridge, there is an area called Mulheim, and it is a famous Turkish quarter. So you will have a lot of Turkish restaurants there and Turkish music and so on and so forth. As for the food, it's like traditional German stuff you would find at pubs. They have a very strong beer culture here as well. They have their local beer called Kolsch. It's actually determined by geography. So there's an exact point at which Kolsch stops being Kolsch and then becomes some other type of beer. That's a very long, probably the one and only, the oldest tradition in Cologne that we've had for the past 200 years, I want to say, maybe even more. I hope that answers your question.
That was Maria Mijuskovic, a local media student, speaking to Michael Mbewe, who is in Cologne, Germany. Well,
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Altebogoyle Kuleni is here. Happy Friday. How are you today?
Cold.
It is cold, eh?
I tell you what, it's the coldest day of the week today in Johannesburg.
it is.
But I tell you what, we're going to have a hot show this afternoon. On the upside, we have a conversation with a man who's made us laugh on social media, probably one of the most popular content creators out there, William Lust KRM. I'm sure you've seen his work on TikTok. He's also a musician. We're going to be talking about his latest body of work, all the way from Botswana, representing Botswana very proudly this afternoon. And then we are joined by Congolese-born South African-based artist by the name of Batundi about his latest collaboration with Msaki and Tresor. So it's going to be a music-filled Friday. It's going to be hot. It's going to be fire. And we're going to keep you warm on the upside this afternoon.
It's coming up from the top of the hour with Debucho Lekuleni. For myself, Lulu, Gaboo, and the Africa Update team, that's our producer, Nhlanhla Mahlangu, our technical coordinator, Mondli Mdambi, and our social media, Elaine Bengani. It's been a good day. Let's do this again on Monday. Have a great weekend, and do keep warm and continue with us on our socials. Bye-bye.